Hey everyone, this is Anna here, and with this video I wanted to show you in detail how I mix the Cuerda Seca mixture of oil and oxide because I've been getting a lot of questions, so I just wanted to show you. I usually eyeball the amount, but here I'm using sesame oil, which is the latest that I've been using now, sesame oil, because of the smell. I don't like the smell of the linseed oil that I had at home, so I decided to try sesame seed oil, and it worked. So I'm just using a few drops here, and that is the amount of black iron oxide that I use, and the white is Frit 3124 is what I've been using. You can use other types of Frit. This is what I have usually for my glazes, or 3134 or 3124. Usually those are the ones that I use. But that was the amount, which was a very little dab at the end of my palette knife to the amount of oxide, which looked to be like maybe a teaspoon of black iron oxide. And you mix the oil just a few drops at a time to form a paste. And the key thing here is you do have to test, because there are so many variables when mixing this, the amount of oil you use. If you have too much oil, the ratio won't be right. You have too much oil being absorbed into your bisqueware. And if you have too thick, it's not going to flow out of your brush, the liner brush that I use, and you see I'll have the full tutorial here again. But I wanted to concentrate more into the mixture, because a lot of people are having problems with getting this right. So I believe, because I don't consider myself an expert on this technique, I've been doing now for a little while, and it's been working, so I wanted to share with you all how I do it. I think the key thing is to also mix well. Like using the palette knife, you really have to mix in the powders until it really dissolves and becomes all one with the oil. If you don't mix that well, some people are saying that the mixture is too powdery. I believe maybe it's not mixing with the oil that well. If you think it's just a quick mixing, it is not. So you really have to dissolve the powder form with the oil until it becomes one. I like to mix the mixture fresh every time I do it. And this time, because I have several pieces to paint, I did mix a bigger batch, as you can see now, and that will be good for making several pieces. And I will save these on a little Tupperware dish that I buy at the dollar store, one of those real little containers with the lid. You can use anything to store that. But just remember, if you store, the oil sometimes get a little separated, and you do have to stir again. But as you can see, I do spend quite a few minutes making sure that you really need to stir that all together and press it against a real glossy surface. Like here I'm using just a tile, 4x4 glossy white tile. You can use that. You can use any tile that has the glossy surface, or you can use a piece of glass. Some people have the thicker glass that you can use, that people use for painting. You can also use, a glass surface, or a marble, anything that has that glossy surface that's not going to absorb your mixture. So here I'm ready to start painting. And you do have to be careful for not touching the line work. It is kind of tricky sometimes, like on this vessel, because it is the chimney that I'm doing. I'm putting my finger inside on the narrow part. so I could paint the rest without touching. So it is kind of tricky sometimes depending what you're painting. And I had questions if I go back again on the lines. I do that if I see that the line gets a little too thin. I go back, not to make it darker, but just to make it a little thicker. I don't want it too thin, but I don't want it too thick either. But sometimes, you might get in areas, it might go a little darker. I'm not too worried about that as long as it's not like a blob. So when you touch your liner brush to grab the oil, just make sure on the brush it's not like a blob of oil, because that is gonna just flow right into your piece. So I make sure that when I go grab the mixture, that I dab the brush a little bit on the tile again, so that it's not a whole lot of the oil mixture on the brush. It's not like fully loaded. That's what I wanted to say. I guess is a better word. It's not like fully loaded brush. So you can't go too far with the oil. For example, if you're making like that leaf that I'm painting right now, I can't make it go on the whole length of the leaf all the way to the end, because the piece is absorbing your oil. And so that's why you keep going. You go until you see that you don't have any more oil, and then you just grab more. So it is a little tricky until you get the idea of how, you just have to try it and see. But that's what I notice, is that the PC is absorbing the oil fast, so you can't go too far with it. And then you have to grab some more and continue the line work. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the liner brush. You just have to experiment with different liner brushes, whatever you have at home. If you don't have, I will put some on the description that I like. I do have several. But here you see that I started with one liner brush, and then I wasn't too happy on how this one, sometimes it splits the hairs at the ends. So I wasn't getting the real fine line at the end. So I found another one that I had that worked out better. But just try, different liner brushes and see which one works better for you. Try on another piece, with the oil, and see which one flows better. But yeah, here I'm just continue to make my leaves, and I will probably speed up so you see it is a process that takes a while, and you have to be careful, not touching it. As you can see here, I'm trying to find a position to how to hold it better, and also make sure that I'm showing it well on the video. So I will speed up at times during this video. I explain, and then I go back to speeding it up again so you can see the whole process. So here I'm using my little squeeze bottles that I'll put the link on the description with the tips also. And I'm using Stroke and Coat with a few drops of water that I just add to the bottle and then shake it really well. And as you can see, it flows out of the tips very easily. Don't have to squeeze the bottle that much. And like I said before, they can't be thick, the glaze. It has to be watered down. But be careful not to add too much water. What I do is I put it on the bottle, maybe halfway. I don't fill the bottles because you just use a small amount. And then I just add a few little drops of water inside, just to make it flow better. So don't put too much water. It's just to make it, just a few drops will do. And then you just shake it really well. So here I'm using Leaping Green or Leaping Lizard Stroke and Coat, which is my favorite green color, and then Limelight, which is the real pale green. And as you can see, you can mix colors to make like maybe shadows or highlights into your design. So you can intermix the colors with Stroke and Coat, which is another real nice feature of this glaze. Or you can go back sometimes and make like dots on the leaves, or different touches that you want to, however you want your design to be. Like here I'm making some areas darker on the leaves, some areas lighter, depending on the color. You can do that when you're painting flowers. You can make the highlights with a lighter color, and then you can go right back and use a darker color, which is really nice. Sometimes I use like 2 or 3 different greens on leaves. I think here I only use 2. On other designs, I use more different shades of greens. One thing I forgot to mention is that on the bottle, what I did is I poured the liner glaze earlier before I started to use the glaze on the bottle. I just found it easier to do it that way. I had my daughter help me with this one because of the big hole in the front. So what I did is I covered with my hand and she poured the glaze inside, and I held it tightly so that the glaze wouldn't escape from the front. And then I poured out of the top. So that's something you should do also. If you remember, it's much easier to do the inside. Same thing with a mug or any vessel, closed form like that, is to use your liner glaze before you start painting. It just makes it easier that way. If you forget to do it, then make sure you wrap with saran wrap or something that will protect your painting. And then you can pour the glaze just to make sure that you won't mess up your work. So if you're going to use a brushing glaze, then you're okay. You don't have to do it before, although I suggest to do it before, but you don't have to. So here I'm doing the background color, which with this color that is my favorite is the My Blue Haven Stroke and Coat. It's a real pale baby blue, almost like a sky blue color, which makes for a real nice background color. So I used a new bottle here of my glaze, and it just didn't seem right. The consistency wasn't quite the same as the ones I was used to before. So sometimes you might find this also with a glaze that is just doesn't seem quite the same as what you used to. I should have gone ahead and add a little bit more water. It was a little kind of gummy consistency. Even with I added a few drops of water, it still wasn't quite right. But as you can see here, in a few places I went over the line because as I said before, if it is thick, chances are you'll have a hard time keeping it from the lines. And if it is thinner, then it's much easier to resist. So I should have added more water, but I didn't. So I was having a harder time here. And what I do when I do go over my lines, as you might have seen here before, I use a Diamond Core Sgraffito tool. You can use anything like a toothpick or something to clean the lines if it goes over the line. So I do that quite a bit. If I go over, I do try to catch it. So here I did my logo also using the oil, and I'm going around using the Stroke and Coat around my signature. And now I'm doing the rest of the bottle or the chimney using brushing the glaze instead of using the bottle, because my design is mostly in the front of the bottle. So the rest of the work I just brushed on the glaze, same glaze, Stroke and Coat. So thank you for watching, guys, and I hope you've learned something from me and will give this technique a try. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. So here's the finished product. I took it outside so you can see it on the daylight. I'm pretty happy with the results. And here is being used with an incense. Very cute.